What is up, everyone? I'm Rusty, your local laboratory manic, and this is Lamman EDH. I've got 5 unique commander deck ideas for you to build around. 4 are Warhammer themed, and 1 is a Nicol Bolas Archenemy deck to tie into my Nicol Bolas versus the Emperor of Mankind video over on my other lore based channel. Link for that will be down below. Now, Warhammer was a powerful set in Magic. There was 4 decks released, but instead of just building around the obvious stuff, I wanted to dig into some of the weird, more flavorful, and unique ways to use these cards, especially around Tyranids, because they are my favorite faction in Warhammer. Deck links will be in the description, and make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I'm doing a giveaway to celebrate 1 year on YouTube. Now, let's join the Hive Fleet and jump into it. Magus Lucea Kane is the commander for this first deck, and it's one I own in paper. It's based around X-spells, but really it's about using her ability again and again, then using it to cast an X-spell to copy it multiple times. She is a 4 mana Tamir legendary creature human Tyranid wizard. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Then you can tap her, add 2 colorless. Whenever you next cast a spell with X in its mana cost or activate an ability with X in its activation cost this turn, copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy, and it's a 1/1. So, the way her ability will work, you tap it to create a delayed trigger. Then you untap her, tap her again, creating another delayed trigger all in the same turn. There's plenty of ways to untap her, by the way. Do this as much as you can, and then the next spell you cast with an X spell like Banefire, for example, will copy that many times. So if you use your ability 3 times and then cast Banefire, you actually get 4 copies of it, which is pretty good. Now, you know I love these lore tidbits, and I looked up this character, Magus Lucea Kane, and I saw nothing. She doesn't have any lore in Warhammer. She was really never mentioned. She's a unique character in Warhammer that first appeared in Magic the Gathering decks. That is kind of insane to me. I expected all the legendaries to be named characters. But what can we really know about her? Well, Magus is a psychic prophet and manipulator of the Genestealer cult, appearing as a human, but really is a Tyranid. So, she acts as a charismatic voice for them working inside the Imperial Order. If you don't know, Tyranids are a horrifying extragalactic superspecies made up of countless bioengineered organisms all connected through a single psychic hive mind. They're traveling through the Milky Way in massive hive fleets. The Tyranids exist only to consume, evolve, and reproduce. Every member of the hive has a function, and that's how our deck will work. Our Tyranids will provide mana, removal, draw, tokens, and win cons. A Baron is an X, 1 generic, and 1 green Tyranid mutant. Has Ravenous, and then Trample. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls, and it comes in as a 0/0. Ravenous, by the way, is a Tyranid specific mechanic made in this deck. It says, this creature enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. If X is 5 or more, you draw a card when it enters. Aberrant is removal. Sporocyst is mana ramp. It's an XX green Tyranid with Ravenous Defender. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for up to X basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This can get pretty brutal with our commander. We'll have so much mana. Broodlord gives X +1/+1 counters distributed among any number of creatures you control. Exocrine deals X damage to each other creature. Tyranid Guard sacks to give all creatures you control hexproof and indestructible, and the list just goes on. They provide so many functions for this deck, and they're copied hopefully multiple times with our commander. To maximize our X, I added mana doublers. Some are actually mana triplers, like Nyx Bloom Ancient. Some double mana for even the opponent, like Heartbeat of Springs, so be careful when you're playing these. Some double only your stuff, like Regal Behemoth if you're the Monarch. I have 11 total in the deck. A few of these, and you will be very ravenous and create a large Tyranid army. As an alternative win con, I have a few fireball effects in here. They're X spells that do burn damage like Crackle with power. It's an XXX red sorcery. Crackle with power deals 5 times X damage to up to X targets. I prefer X spells that have a few targets. It ends the game quicker because you will be a huge threat and your opponent will target you with your mana doublers out. They're going to freak out, okay? So you got to make sure you're taking out your opponents quick. Now, a third win con for this deck is Simic Ascendancy. It's a 2 mana Simic enchantment. You can pay 3, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And then whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on this enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if this enchantment has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. And don't forget, our Tyranids do get +1/+1 counters placed on them. And don't forget to throw in all your tap and untap cards. You got Thousand Year Elixir, Mage Right Stone. There's plenty in blue. There's a lot of blue creatures that do it as well. So throw those in to maximize your commander's ability to get a huge Tyranid Hive Fleet. This next deck is a secret commander deck, meaning I built around a card in the 99, not the commander. Genestealer Patriarch is the secret commander. It has such a unique ability, I just had to build around it. It's a 5 mana blue Tyranid. Whenever Genestealer Patriarch attacks, put an infection counter on target creature defending player controls. Then, whenever a creature with an infection counter on it dies, you can create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a Tyranid in addition to its other types, and it's a 4/4. A Gene Stealer is a Tyranid bioform designed by the Hive Mind to infiltrate worlds before a full invasion. Using parasitic reproduction and psychic influence, even a single Gene Stealer can secretly spread its genetic curse, creating a hidden Gene Stealer cult, and weaken a planet from within. By the time the Hive Fleet even arrives, the world may already be compromised from the bottom up. The cool thing about this card is that if something dies and you happen to have multiple Gene Stealer Patriarchs out, you get multiple triggers and multiple copies of it. So, on that note, I put a crap ton of clones in this deck, and that's always a great way to build a secret commander deck. Usually, they aren't legendary, or you could just have them as a commander. So, you can copy the crap out of them with clones or token effects. Now, I have a bunch in the deck. Multicolor ones will be particularly good due to the commander of the deck, which I'll cover in a second. Altered Ego is a Simic clone that can't be countered, and it enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, and it has a cost of X, 2 generic, a green, and a blue. Progenitor Mimic is another common one. It's a 6 mana Simic clone. It makes a token of itself at your upkeep, which can get pretty out of hand after a few turns because each clone makes a copy of itself and it just keeps going. The commander is Momar Vig, Simic Visionary, which, let's be honest, the Simic would love Tyranids. Constant evolving, biological change only hindered by biomass. No morality. It's perfect Simic. He is a 5 mana Simic legendary creature elf wizard. Whenever you play a green creature spell, you may search your library for a creature card and reveal it. If you do, you shuffle your library and put on top. Whenever you cast a blue creature spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put that card into your hand and it's a 2/2. So basically, I made it so I can fit as many multicolored creatures as possible, like Gaia Engineer, that's just a mana dork that taps for 2. But since it's blue and green, when you cast them, you can search your library for a creature, put it into your hand basically. Now, turning every creature into a tutor is pretty good. What I ended up doing is turning a lot of my what I call vegetables of my deck, my mana ramp, my removal, my draw. I try to turn that into multicolor creatures. That way I'm not losing any function in the deck. Sometimes you don't have multicolor creatures to cast, but you'll have plenty of green creature if this is a very green heavy deck. And putting your Gene Stealer, a toolbox card, or a clone on top of your deck could be too slow. So stuff that lets you cast creatures from the top of your library are great for our strategy. Vizier of Menagerie is a 4 mana green snake cleric. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Then you can spend any mana of any type to cast creature spells, and it's a 3/4. Elven Chorus is another one. It's a 4 mana green enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Now, these are pretty similar, but the Vizier is tutorable with your commander. Elven Chorus is an enchantment, so it's not, but it makes your creatures mana dorks, so it's kind of a trade off depending on what you need at a given time. We need to destroy creatures to trigger the Genestealer's ability. In blue and green, it isn't the easiest. Fight spells are a big way to do it, but that's limited to you having creatures strong enough to not only kill theirs, but also survive the fight. Here are some ways to ensure destruction of your opponent's creatures. Transmogrifying Wand is a 3 mana artifact. It enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters. You can pay 1, tap it, remove a charge counter from it. Destroy target creature. Its controller gets a 2/4 white ox creature token. Activate only anytime you can cast a sorcery. Fun fact, there's only 32 blue spells in all of Magic that say destroy. You get your Rapid Harmonization, you got your Pongify. You can also do Polymorph. Now, this doesn't look like the best card in this situation, but it's actually better than it looks. It's a 4 mana blue sorcery. You can destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Its controller reveals cards from the top of the library until they reveal a creature card. That player puts it onto the battlefield and then shuffles their library. Now, so what you do is choose your opponent's creature, destroy it. You get it because it had an infection counter on it. They get a replacement, which you will put another counter on, so they're not without things to steal. Making Genestealer unblockable will also be crucial. Doing this in creature form is probably the best, so it's tutorable. Deep Channel Mentor can do this. It's a 6 mana blue merfolk rogue. It says blue creatures you control are unblockable, and it's a 2/2. Both of the Genestealer's ability are triggered abilities, so copying obviously beneficial. There are creatures that copy triggered abilities like Aedric Mathematical Genius, a 2 mana blue human advisor. You pay 3, tap him, you copy an ability. Or you can pay 2, sack him, copy an ability. So for 5 mana, you can copy the same ability twice. I really like the idea of this deck. Secret Commander decks have their pros and cons, but stealing your opponent's stuff in this way could be pretty fun. Definitely more on the casual side, but still worth trying. This next deck is definitely not on the casual side. I would put it probably in a bracket 4, maybe bracket 5 if you go crazy with it. It is combo central. There's like 10 different combos inside the deck, and one piece of many of those is the commander, which is another Tyranid. It's the Red Terror. It's a 4 mana red legendary creature, Tyranid. Whenever a red source you control deals damage to one or more permanents and or players, put a +1/+1 counter on the Red Terror, and it's a 4/3. The Red Terror was a legendary Tyranid strain from a Hive Fleet called Kraken, first appearing before the fleet's official invasion. It terrorized an imperial mining world, repeatedly emerging from tunnels to slaughter defenders, drag away bodies, and vanish underground. Survivors describe the blood red monster with rock cutting talons and a maw large enough to swallow a human whole, though no one knows if it's one creature or several. One of my favorite combos is the Red Terror with All Will Be One. And honestly, I think the Tyranid and the Phyrexians fighting would be really interesting. Now, All Will Be One, if you don't know, is a 5 mana red enchantment. Whenever you put one or more counters on a permanent or player, All Will Be One deals that much damage to target opponent, creature an opponent controls, or planeswalker an opponent controls. So you do damage with any red source, trigger the Red Terror's ability, it gets a counter. Then all will be one triggers since you're putting a counter on something, dealing 1 damage to an opponent. And since all that will be one is a red source, it puts another counter on the Red Terror. And then it just goes and it's a cycle until every opponent is dead. Casey Jones' Back Alley Brute is another one that combos with our commander. It's a 4 mana red human berserker, has menace. When it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. And then whenever you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, it deals that much damage to target opponent, and it's a 4/2. Same situation. You do damage with the red source. The Red Terror gets a counter. Casey Jones deals damage. Red Terror gets a counter, and the cycle goes on. Another combo that works with All Will Be One is Quest for Pure Flame. It's similar to the Red Terror. When a source deals damage to an opponent, it gets a quest counter, triggering All Will Be One, which triggers more damage, which triggers the quest of Pure Flame, and the cycle continues. Quest for the Pure Flame does have an ability at the bottom where you can remove 4 quest counters and sack it to essentially have damage be doubled for the turn. But you don't need it. It's not that we really want it for that first ability. War Elemental, another card that combos with All Will Be One, it does the same thing. It gets a counter when damage is dealt, but it is a 3 mana red elemental creature that is also a 1/1. Getting the combos in mono red isn't impossible, but it is a bit tricky. It doesn't have the best tutors, but there are options. Everyone knows Gamble, but do you know Triple Gamble? It's actually Fervent Mastery. It's a 5 mana red sorcery. You can pay 4 of them rather than pay its normal cost, but if you do pay 4, an opponent discards any number of cards, then draws that many. You search your library for up to 3 cards, put them into your hand, shuffle, then discard 3 cards at random. So basically does the same thing, but in terms of 3. Now, since we have so many combos in the deck, especially some that go with Red Terror, we could get multiple combo pieces with Fervent Mastery and hope we keep 1 or 2. But if you want to be more, precisional, you could do Rite of Three Wishes. There's a few colorless options that get you specific cards from your deck, but higher CMC investment. It's a 5 mana artifact. It comes in with 3 wish counters on it. You can pay 5, tap it, remove a wish counter to tutor for a card, shuffle your library. Now, this next deck is an aristocrat themed deck that wants to make our creatures large before sacrificing them, which is the opposite of what most aristocrat style decks do. They want a lot of small ones. That way they can sacrifice them and it's not that much of an investment. The commander is the Swarmord, which is a 6 mana Tamir legendary creature Tyranid. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it enters with 2+1/+1 counters on it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. And then whenever a creature you control with a counter on it dies, you draw a card, and it's a 5/5. The Swarmlord is the Hive Mind's ultimate Tyranid commander, a uniquely powerful Hive Tyrant bioform created when normal swarm tactics aren't enough. It has more independence than almost any other Tyranid organism, allowing it to outthink enemies, adapt strategies, and command hive fleets with terrifying precision. What makes it even worse is that the Swarmlord is essentially immortal. When killed, the hive mind can recreate it and its memories, experience, and knowledge intact, making each return more dangerous than the last. The main strategy to get our creatures big with minimal investment are effects like Master Biomancer, which is a 4 mana Simic Elf Wizard. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to Master Biomancer's power, and is a mutant in addition to its other types, and it's a 2/4. He was the only version of this ability for a while, but now we have over 15, so you can easily build around it. A second part of this strategy is using effects that create tokens when the creature dies equal to its power. Chasm Skulker is an example. It's a 3 mana blue squid horror. Whenever you draw a card, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Then, whenever this creature dies, you create X 1/1 blue squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature, and it's a 1/1. So imagine this. You have Master Biomancer out, maybe your commander, and you have some counter doubler out. Chasm Stalker in ETBs, and then it gets 2 to 4 counters on it thanks to the doubling. So now it's a 5/5. Then you draw a few cards, blah blah blah, becomes a 6/6, 7/7, 8/8. You sacrifice it. Let's say it has 6 counters on it. Now you're getting 6/1/1s, but those come in because of Master Biomancer, even more counters. So you're growing your army and you're doing minimal investment. That's the key part of this deck. And I really like Master Biomancer. It is the best of all the abilities, in my opinion, because you can boost him more and he gives counters equal to its power. So if you boost him 2 counters, he's a 4. Now everything's coming in with 4+1/+1 counters. It could get out of hand really fast, especially if you play Master Biomancer after already playing another card that does something similar. Let's speed run some of the Master Biomancer effects. That way you can kind of sense of what your options are. Renata, Call to the Hunt, gives them just a +1/+1 counter when they enter. Arwen, Weaver of Hope, has them come in with counters equal to her toughness, so it's almost the opposite of Master Biomancer. Grumgully, the Generous, gives a only one counter. However, it's only to non-humans. Wild Growth Archaic lets your creatures enter with counters equal to the amount of colors you spent to cast it. Thunderous Velocipede gives one counter if they're 4 CMC or less, or 3 counters if they're 5 CMC or more. Bioengineered Future has them come into play equal to the number of lands you've played this turn. Communal Brewing ETBs, and then you let any number of opponents draw, then the enchantment gets that many ingredient counters, then your creatures enter with a +1/+1 counter equal to the number of ingredient counters on the enchantment. So probably 3, but more if you proliferate. It can get kind of out of hand. Master Chef has them enter with a +1/+1 counter, but only if you control your commander. For more examples of creatures dying when they get tokens, you have something like Hooded Hydra that gives you 1/1 snakes when it dies. It can also come prepaid with its own counters. You don't even need a Master Biomancer because it is a Hydra with X in its cost, and you know it's a 0/0, so you always want some counters on it. Hangerback Walker is a weird one. It's also an X spell, but you can cast it for free if you have a Master Biomancer out, and it'll come in with counters. When it dies, you get 1/1 Flying Thopter creature tokens. And then you got something weird, one with the Kami. Now, this is an aura with flash. It can enchant a creature you control, but when a creature you control that's modified dies, you get 1/1 colorless spirits. Now, you don't want to sacrifice what this is enchanting because it's any modified creature, not just the enchanted creature. Then you got Termagant Swarm. It gets you 1/1 Tyranid tokens equal to its power when it dies. Also an X spell, and it fits our theme since this whole video seems to be Tyranid themed. Now, one great card to throw in this deck is Stalking Vengeance. It's a 7 mana red avatar, has haste. Whenever another creature you control dies, it deals damage equal to its power to target player, and it's a 5/5. So it's an alternate win con. We don't need to swarm our opponent with our Swarm Lord or our tokens. We can burn them out of the game. You just have a sacrifice outlet on board, sacrifice a creature, get a bunch of tokens, sacrifice those tokens. They're getting counters, they're pretty strong, and you can essentially burn someone out of the game. Speaking of sacrifice outlets, we are in green. And if you saw my lizard deck, which is a mono green aristocrat deck, we have plenty, especially since we're 3 colors. There's red ones, there's blue ones, a lot of lands that sacrifice creatures. So you got plenty of options. One that I really like is Greater Good because it's a draw engine. It's a 4 mana green enchantment. You sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power, then discard 3 cards. So if we have a 7/7, we draw 7, discard 3, it's only plus, really. Then you got Evolutionary Leap. It's good because it replaces the creature you sacrifice. It's a 2 mana green enchantment. You pay a green, you sacrifice a creature. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, I didn't want to make a deck with the same commander as another deck in the video. Man, I was going kind of crazy with these Warhammer decks. I made so many that I could make a whole video over the Tyranids. Now, the Swarm Lord has a unique ability that I've played around in the past. It gets counters equal to the number of times you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. Now, of course, if you have him as your commander, it can get kind of pricey. So one way to minimize that, if you do this alternate strategy, you could put creatures that come into play with counters, blah, 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 like our Master Biomancer, but you could also play cards that tap for mana equal to their power. There's 8 or 10 total, I can't remember, in Magic the Gathering in these color pairings. So you could do that. It'll help you offset the commander tax. Of course, you can do like a food chain kind of combo if you want, but this way is a little more casual. Just depends what you're trying to build. But I like the original deck. Master Biomancer is a card I've wanted to build around for a while. I really like that ability. It's a static ability with very little investment. Okay, to fit my Warhammer versus Magic theme, I wanted to do another Bolas deck. Now, I showed you last video a Bolas deck I actually have in paper, and I really love it. It's one of my oldest decks. But what if we do something a little different here? This is essentially an arch enemy strategy. Now, if you're not familiar with Arch Enemy, I'll explain it here in a second. But I built this deck with that format in mind. Now, Nicol Bolas the Ravager is the commander. It's a 4 mana Grixis Elder Dragon. As flying, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and then you can pay 7 to flip it to its Planeswalker side, and it's a 4/4. But really, we want the front side of it. He transforms into Nicol Bolas the Arisen. He has 4 abilities. His +2, you draw 2 cards. His -3, he deals 10 damage to target creature or planeswalker. His -4 is you put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And then his -12 is exile all but the bottom card of target player's library, and it starts at 7 loyalty. Let's get into some of the spells he can cast using his infinite source of mana. His mind-rending touch is probably his most infamous, having it even back when he was just an Elder Dragon. It's a brutal combination of blue mental magic and black death magic. As shown here, he can even use it on old walkers like Teferi, a great tactic because it prevents them from focusing, making them have seizures, and disintegrates their physical essence. Now, I came across this excerpt of him doing this to a character named Dark, and I just wanted to read it to you so you get a full sense of its power. He screamed, his body convulsed, his mind drained, his lungs burst, and his blood boiled. He was thousands of miles high in the air, and he was also buried in the deepest, blackest pit. He burned and drowned simultaneously, starved and grew fat. He was split asunder, torn into a million pieces, and instantly reassembled endlessly for all of time. It also is worth noting that he can use this attack at full force or subtly just to manipulate someone's mind. Wizards of the Coast has released official Commander Archenemy rules. However, if I were you, I would get with your playgroup if you're interested in playing and kind of make up your own rules. Now, here are the official ones. It's a 1 versus 3 or more kind of game. You get 60 life as the arch enemy, and your opponents share 60 life. You get what's called a scheme deck. Now, this is an oversized card based deck that comes in arch enemy products only. There have been 3. The original arch enemy, which really didn't have a theme, each deck was its own thing. Then you had the Nicol Bolas Arch Enemy theme set. It came with a Nicol Bolas deck, and then it came with 3 Gatewatch decks, and then the Arch Enemy scheme cards. And Duskmoor had an arch enemy theme to it, which kind of makes sense because you're trying to survive a scary movie if you go to Duskmoor. So those are the 3 ones. You need to get your arch enemy cards from them or make proxies of whatever, whatever you want. Then the scheme deck has to be at least 10 scheme cards. It could be as many as you want, but a minimum of 10. And then at the beginning of the arch enemy's main phase, they do draw a card. The arch enemy does go first, and it does draw on its first turn. There are 2 types of scheme cards. You got your ongoing schemes and then just your regular schemes. Because I have willed it is an ongoing scheme that states spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. And at the beginning of your opponent's end step, if they cast 4 or more spells this turn, abandon this scheme. So you put it into the discard pile. Behold My Grandeur is another scheme. It says, whenever you set this scheme in motion, add a blue, black, and red to your mana pool. Then, when you set this scheme in motion, if you control 6 or more lands, you may search your library for a card with CMC 6 or greater, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. So, some of these schemes are better later on in the game. So, if you get them early, they're not as good. This one boosts you, gives you a ritual early game, and then late game can tutor. In the deck list for my Bolas deck, in the description of this video, it has every single scheme card in the game. You just go to, I think it's in the sideboard, look through them, pick out whichever ones you would do for one of your decks. It doesn't have to be a Bolas themed deck, it could be literally any deck. So, keeping the ability of Bolas's mind-rending touch in mind, no pun intended, we will be taking our opponent's minds, and that is represented via discard in Magic. But you want to keep two things in mind. Not to discard your own cards. You need them way more than your opponent's. One of your cards equals three of theirs. And two, you need to have cards that discard each opponent, not just one. But we have plenty of options in the list. Vicious Rumors, for example, is a 1 mana black sorcery. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. Each opponent discards a card, and then they mill the top card of their library, and you gain 1 life. In this format, in this particular instance, it's way better than Thoughtseize. It's 1 mana just like Thoughtseize, but it gets each opponent, it deals 1 damage to each of them, and they share life total. So it's like dealing 3 damage to them, and then they mill 3 cards. Now, removal is something similar in this deck. We want it to spread the love, essentially. Soul Shatter, for example, is a 3 mana black instant. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest CMC among creatures or planeswalkers they control. This is perfect, gets rid of their best thing, each opponent's best thing, and it is instant speed, which I love to see. Okay, your opponents share life. Slowly whittling each away is highly effective in this format. So, when they have low hand size, we have some ways to punish them that deal damage to each of them at their upkeep. So, it's almost like it's a triple effect. Shrieking Affliction, for example, is a 1 mana black enchantment. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has one or fewer cards in hand, he or she loses 3 life. Wheel of Torture is another one. It's a 3 mana artifact. During each of your opponent's upkeeps, Wheel of Torture deals 1 damage to that player for each card fewer than 3 cards in their hand. But we also have other things that make opponents lose life. This time for discarding, Liliana's Caress and Megrim both have their opponent either get dealt 2 damage or they lose 2 life. Which, if it's 3 opponents discarding a card, that's 6 life. So if they share a life, that's a tenth of their life. But if you have both, that's what, a fifth of their life, which is pretty powerful. One thing you don't really see often in discard decks is bouncing stuff your opponent controls back to their hand so you can force them to discard it. Because once they have 0 cards in hand, a lot of your cards are useless. Nautic Scales is an example of this. It's a very powerful control artifact, but it affects you too, so keep that in mind. It's a 4 mana artifact. During each player's upkeep, return to owner's hand each creature that player controls with power greater than the number of cards in his or her hand. Some schemes can even discard, and man, the scheme names are super sweet. I wish they had card names like this. Surrender Your Thoughts says whenever you set the scheme in motion, target opponent chooses self or others. If that player chooses self, he or she discards 4 cards. If that player chooses others, each other opponent discards 2 cards. Pretty powerful. And then Every Dream a Nightmare, another great name. It says whenever you set the scheme in motion, each opponent discards a card. You draw the card for each land card discarded this way. Remember, your 3 opponents will be gunning for you. Normally, discard is a mean strategy, salt inducing, honestly, but it's not like when you're no longer the threat, they'll leave you alone. They have to beat you to win the game, so they're going to be doing their best. And I presume they're going to have equal base decks. You know your play group better than anyone. So this deck could be salt inducing, could be mean, but I think since we're fighting for our life, 1v3 the whole game, it's not so bad. Also, you want to do protection spells. Propaganda, for example, great. Silent Arbiter is really great because it says no more than one creature can attack each combat. You're not going to be doing a lot of attacking in your deck, but your opponents, they share a combat, they share a turn, they share a life total, so they can only attack with one of their probably many creatures, really slowing down the game for you. Now, overall, I think this format, this Archenemy format, is very fun, very unique. And if you think things are getting stale with your play group, it could be an avenue that you take. As a special thanks and to celebrate reaching 1 year on YouTube on this channel and reaching 1 month on my other channel, I'm doing a giveaway. And I'm doing that giveaway with a theme of Warhammer and Bolas. I'll be giving away custom foil proxies to a few viewers. I'm going to make them. I make them for fun. Here are a few examples on screen. All you have to do is be subscribed to one of my channels and comment which of these decks is your favorite, or a Warhammer deck that you play you want to tell me about, or who would win in a fight between Nicol Bolas, the Planeswalker, and the Emperor of Mankind. Comment down below. And for my international viewers, you can apply for this, but we might have to discuss a shipping situation because it can get pretty expensive to ship overseas. We will work something out. I don't want you left out of this giveaway. And thanks for watching until the end of the video. Quick shout out to my paid patrons, Brooke, Wolf, Brody, Who's New, Guitari, and Chris. I appreciate your support. Check out my Patreon if you're interested in additional content and deck help or lore videos. There's both paid and unpaid options that you can choose from. Now remember, the deck links to these decks are down below. Subscribe or like the video if you found this useful to you, and check out my other videos popping up on screen. And I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.